Spirit is who we truly are. He believes that we were fully developed spirits when we were born into this world. And ceremony keeps us connected, keeps our spirit alive. Ceremony feeds our spirit. It lifts our spirits up. Spirit connects all living things. He talks about our spirit names and how important they are. Our names tell a story, and it gives us insight into our path. Our spirits guide our life, and when we are connected to spirit, we are truly at peace. I asked him, what is spirit injury? What does it look like? The mass losses upon contact created fear and fright for Indigenous people to be who they were. It can be seen in the ongoing violence in families, the thousands missing and murdered Indigenous women, the high rates of child apprehension, and the high rates of incarceration of Indigenous people. The mass trauma is still happening. He talks about his time in residential schools. He said that he was given the gift of travel. His spirit left his body so that he could be protected against the abuse because that injury was too much. So he explains spirit injury is when your spirit leaves your body. And then he talks about spiritual recovery, calling your spirits back in. He talks about when he came home from residential schools, his mother used to speak to him in the language and he would respond in English. The painful memories of what happened to him when he spoke the language was too great. And it was too hard for him to deal with, so he just didn't speak the language anymore. That trauma lived in his memories. Years and years later, his mother would say, never forget who you are and where you came from. But that's something that his mother always tried to instill in him. She kept telling him over and over, never forget who you are. He explains that it's important to go back to the time where you lost your spirit. So for many of us, that would be when we were children. Many of us experienced a lot of harm when we were at a young age, and many of us didn't get a chance to experience those ceremonies, those important ceremonies that we did when we were young children. So he talks about the time where he was at this event for survivors, and an elder lined them all up, all the men, and they did a coming out ceremony. They danced, and he said that in that moment he felt so free, and that's when his spirit came back to him. He's been doing trauma work for the past 30 years, and he wouldn't be able to do the work that he does today if that experience didn't happen. And so now he talks about doing things to bring our spirits back to us, feeding our spirits, calling them back in. Many of these ceremonies were lost, and we need to reclaim them. We need to reclaim them to find our power. He referred to this as spiritual recovery. He talks about how spirit is working through us and shared a teaching with me, or an experience that he had. He was at this place, and there was a man there, and he was very sick. And there was a lot of grandmothers and grandfathers there, and he was able to conduct this ceremony like an extraction. He's never done that before, but he was able to take that sickness out of that person, and he was able to provide that person with their spirit name. And this kind of scared him because he's never done that ceremony. He didn't even know he knew how to do it. And the grandmothers and grandfathers told him, we remember those ceremonies. We've seen that before. Our grandparents used to do those ceremonies. And so he learned at that time that he experienced spirit using him as a vessel to heal somebody else. So spirit's working all around us. the greater our connection, the greater our power is. The more open we are to doing this work. Spirit chose him to be a vessel, to help that other person, to connect them back to Spirit. The spirit of our ancestors are around us, and they're doing the work that they need to do. He believes that we do have the power to heal ourselves. All we have to do is go back to our ways and reclaim our language, our land, and our ceremonies. And we also need to learn how to respect each other's similarities and differences. And it's only when we do this are we going to be able to heal as a nation. I'd like to say miigwech for your teachings and your stories. Naha miigwech.